In ancient Southeast Asia, river fish fed communities, but it also created a problem. Catches came in waves, and without a way to keep fish from spoiling, a good day on the water could still end in waste. People needed storage, not luxury. So they turned to two tools they already trusted: salt and rice. They cleaned the fish, packed it tightly, and started building time into their food. Salt slowed rot, but it did not solve everything on its own. The key move came when fish went under salted rice, pressed down so air stayed out. Over weeks and months, the rice began to ferment. That fermentation made acid, and the acid protected the fish. It sounded simple, but the result changed survival math. Food lasted through lean seasons. Protein stayed available when the river did not. This early method became what later generations recognized as narezushi in its oldest form: fermented fish preserved by rice, made to be dependable. It did not start as an elegant meal. It started as insurance. The rice served a job first, not a purpose on the plate. People focused on what mattered, keeping fish edible long after it was caught. The reward was not flavor. The reward was having food at all. The method did not stay where it started. It moved across water and trade routes, and it reached Japan. There, it met a different landscape and a different rhythm of life. People lived close to rivers and inland lakes, where fish arrived in bursts, not in a steady flow. When the catch came in, it came fast, and it needed a plan. Fermenting fish with rice became that plan. Japanese communities took the idea and made it fit local waters. Around lakes and river basins, families prepared fish when it was most available, then sealed it away to change slowly over time. Salt controlled spoilage. Fermentation did the rest. This was not about variety or presentation. It was about keeping a seasonal catch edible long after the boats returned with nothing. As the practice settled in, it stopped feeling like an imported trick and started feeling like tradition. The timing followed nature. Different fish, different seasons, different households making their own choices. Fermented fish and rice became recognizable in Japan as a repeatable way to survive the off-season, and also as a taste people expected each year. A preservation tool turned into a local food identity. In Japan, makers began to notice something important. Time did not only preserve fish, it also changed the rice. The longer it sat, the more the rice broke down, turning sharp and mushy. It still did its job, but it no longer felt like food. So the question shifted from how long it could last to how soon it could be eaten. Fermentation times shortened. The fish still gained a tang, but it did not need months to get there. And now the rice mattered. When it stayed firmer and less aggressive, people could actually eat it with the fish instead of throwing it away. That single change altered the meal's logic. Sushi no longer depended on discarding half the process. With less waiting, sushi moved closer to everyday cooking. It stopped being mainly a storage method and started behaving like prepared food, made with a plan to be consumed soon. The trade-off became clear. Less time meant less extreme preservation, so it relied more on timing, handling, and local availability. Sushi began to live in the space between keeping and eating. Then a simple change arrived that sped everything up: vinegar. Makers still wanted that familiar sour edge that fermentation created, but they no longer wanted to wait months to get it. Vinegar gave them a shortcut. Mixed into rice, it delivered an instant sharpness that tasted like time had passed. The logic was practical and irresistible. Sourness no longer depended on long storage. It could be made on demand. That one swap changed the workflow. Fish no longer needed to sit and slowly transform just to reach a finished flavor. Rice could be seasoned quickly, pressed sooner, and paired with fish without the long countdown. Production accelerated, and that meant more servings, more often. But the taste shifted too. Instead of deep fermented funk, the sourness became cleaner and brighter. Sushi started feeling less like preservation and more like a prepared meal. Once vinegar took over the job of souring, sushi became easier to fit into everyday life. It required less planning, less waiting, and less risk of a batch going wrong. Sellers could respond to demand instead of guessing months ahead. The result was availability. Sushi could be made in smaller runs, served sooner, and eaten more casually. It moved closer to the rhythm of daily eating, even as its old fermented roots faded. In Edo, daily life ran on tight schedules. More people worked for wages, more people ate away from home, and fewer had time to wait for careful, slow foods. So sushi followed the city's pace. Vendors used vinegar-seasoned rice and paired it with toppings and add-ins that needed little waiting. This was hayazushi, fast sushi, made to be finished quickly and sold continuously. The business logic was simple. A stall survived by serving many customers, not a few. Rice had to be ready in bulk. Fish and other ingredients had to be prepared in ways that reduced risk and delays, through salting, simmering, or marinating. Portions stayed compact so they could be handled and eaten immediately. The product changed shape around the street, and the street demanded speed. That pressure created a new expectation. Sushi no longer belonged to the timeline of preservation. It belonged to the moment of purchase. Workers needed food they could hold, carry, and eat without stopping their day. Hayazushi met that need, and it trained customers to want freshness and instant satisfaction. The result mattered. Edo's sushi became a model for portability, quick assembly, and on-the-spot eating. In Edo, speed stopped being a bonus and became the whole point. Hayazushi already cut the waiting time, but vendors pushed it further. They formed small blocks of vinegared rice by hand, then set a slice of fresh fish right on top. No wrapping, no long pressing, no delay. The change sounded simple, yet it rewired sushi's purpose. It became something made to order and eaten immediately. This new style, nigiri sushi, worked because each piece carried its own balance. The rice held together just long enough, and the topping delivered the main taste in one bite. Vendors did not need plates or long explanations. Customers saw what they got at a glance: rice, fish, and clean portions. That clear identity mattered. It made sushi easy to sell fast and easy to recognize as something distinct. Nigiri turned sushi into Edo's practical fast food, built for crowds and short breaks. A worker could buy a few pieces, eat quickly, and move on. For sellers, the format meant high turnover. Press, top, hand it over, repeat. It also changed expectations. Instead of judging sushi by how long it aged, people judged it by how fresh it tasted right now. The center of gravity shifted to immediacy. For early nigiri, freshness decided everything. If the fish sat too long, it turned risky fast. That limit kept sushi tied to what the local market landed that morning and to quick selling at street stalls. Then, cold storage and reliable ice changed the math. Fish lasted longer without spoiling, and it stayed closer to its original taste and texture. Safety became something you could plan, not something you guessed. Once ice could travel with the catch, distance stopped being a hard wall. Coastal fish reached inland sellers in usable condition, and different regions stopped eating only what lived nearby. That opened the door to variety. Not just one or two familiar toppings, but a rotating lineup that depended on shipping routes and seasons. Consistency mattered too. Vendors no longer depended on perfect timing every day. They could hold stock, prepare ahead, and serve steadier quality. That steadiness pushed sushi into new settings. Street food thrived on speed, But restaurants thrived on choice and reliability, and refrigeration supported both. Menus expanded because chefs could trust what would arrive and how long it stayed usable. Customers started expecting options, not just a single local favorite. A simple handheld bite began to fit a sit-down meal. The trade of cold air and ice did not just preserve fish, it reshaped what sushi could be. After World War II, Japan's food system had to reset. Shortages, damaged supply lines, and new rules changed what people could make and sell. Authorities tightened standards around handling seafood, and markets reorganized under clearer oversight. Sushi sellers had to adapt fast. They relied less on informal street routines and more on regulated sourcing, storage, and preparation. Food safety stopped being a local habit and became a national expectation. At the same time, the economy recovered. Paychecks rose, cities rebuilt, and eating out turned from an occasional luxury into a regular choice. Sushi moved with that change. It kept its speed and simplicity, but it also fit the new mood of modern life: clean, efficient, and consistent. More shops opened beyond Tokyo. Techniques standardized. Ingredients traveled farther. Sushi started to look less like a regional specialty and more like a shared national food. This shift did more than spread a dish. It reshaped what sushi meant. People linked it to progress, to dependable quality, and to a post-war identity that balanced tradition with new systems. Restaurants presented sushi as something Japan could be proud of, not just something Edo workers grabbed quickly. By the time the country settled into stability, sushi had become a nationwide symbol of modern Japanese cuisine, ready for its next leap outward. Sushi traveled because people traveled. Japanese migrants and business communities settled in port cities and major capitals, and restaurants followed them. At first, sushi stayed close to the original rules: familiar fish, familiar cuts, familiar expectations about raw seafood. But outside Japan, the supply chain worked differently. Some fish felt unfamiliar, some customers hesitated. A new problem appeared: how to keep the idea of sushi while changing what went inside. Restaurant owners and chefs adjusted, not out of nostalgia, but out of survival. They sourced local seafood, swapped ingredients, and changed the balance of flavors to fit local tastes. Avocado stood in for the rich feel of fatty tuna. Cooked crab replaced raw fish for cautious diners. Seaweed sometimes moved to the inside, so the roll looked less intimidating. The California roll spread because it solved a simple equation: make sushi approachable, then make it desirable. International business amplified the change. As Japanese companies expanded abroad, client dinners and hotel restaurants treated sushi as modern and cosmopolitan, and demand rose fast. More sushi bars opened, then chains followed, and the menu widened again. Spicy sauces, bigger rolls, new textures, new names. Sushi did not just export a dish, it exported a format. Once that happened, innovation turned into momentum, and sushi became global by learning to speak in local ingredients. By the time sushi reached the present day, it no longer belonged to one place or one purpose. It appeared as a plastic-sealed lunch at a train station, and it also appeared as a reservation made weeks ahead. The same basic idea, rice and seafood, served two opposite promises. One promised speed and low cost, the other promised rarity. Sushi had become a spectrum. Freshness sat at the center of the modern definition. Fish got flown across oceans, handled through tight, cold chains, and judged by texture as much as taste. Skill got marketed like a product: knife work, rice temperature, timing, and even the order of each bite. In high-end rooms, the meal followed the chef's plan, not the customer's menu. That control became the point. As sushi climbed into luxury, prestige followed it. Certain fish, certain regions, and certain names carried price tags far beyond the ingredients themselves. A simple piece of tuna could signal status because it represented access to supply, training, and reputation. Meanwhile, cheap sushi kept expanding through supermarkets and chains. The gap widened, and sushi proved it could sell both convenience and bragging rights at once.